Okay, I think we can get started while people are filing in. I'm Emily Hughes. I'm the head of marketing at Mobilize, and I will help moderate today. Quick shout out, we're having some technical difficulties with Ruby's camera, so you may not be able to get to see her face while she's presenting, but we have a picture of her and her cat in the slide, so you will know what she looks like. Apologies for that. We are already getting questions about if this will be recorded and sent out. It will. It's being recorded right now. We will send it out by tomorrow at the latest. I am going to be silent during this presentation, but I'll collect all your questions. So feel free to drop them in chat or drop them in Q&A. I can answer a handful as we go along, but otherwise we'll give them to Jocelyn and Ruby at the end of the presentation. So with that, Jocelyn, Ruby, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. So welcome everybody to our webinar about how to attract and keep the best volunteers in the age of social distancing. We're super excited to have all of you joining us, and I like seeing all the participants tick up as we've been talking. So today we're going to start with just some brief introductions. As Emily said, you'll definitely at least get to see what Ruby looks like along with her adorable cat. We're going to talk about the 3 R's, volunteer management, recruit, retain, and reward. And then as Emily mentioned, we'll be doing Q&A. Feel free to chat them if they come to you, but you can also hold on to them and we can take them at the end as well. So introductions. My name is Jocelyn Straus. I'm a Senior Client Success Manager here at Mobilize. I live in Washington, D.C. with my husband and my 2 kids and pets. And I have a background in advocacy with 6.5 years in organizing and data and tech management at Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action. And I've been here at Mobilize for almost a year. Kick it over to you, Ruby.
Hi, y'all. Can you hear me? Just checking that works. Okay. I'm Ruby. I'm the head of product at Winglift. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. My background is actually in the private sector, consumer, social apps, previously at WeWork and Yahoo and some other startups in the Bay Area. I've been at Winglift for the past year, and focusing on developing our voter contact and fundraising technology efforts. And then that's my adorable little son, Nacho, the cat. So I'll speak a little bit about Winglift. So at Winglift, our mission is to give grassroots volunteers and donors the most high impact actions that they can take for the most important elections. We're unique in that we are solely focused on the volunteer experience versus running voter contact programs or paid media ourselves. We serve as a funnel to connect grassroots volunteers with actions that matter most near them, or now in this virtual world that are virtually available. So we've always been a digital first organization. Since the beginning, our staff has worked remotely. We've run our organizing programs and operations as distributed and digital first programs. That said, COVID has had a dramatic and devastating effect on our nation, and no one has been spared in the spectrum of impact. So we've spent the last month or so adjusting our programming and updating our tech tools to shift to fully support virtual organizing.
Myself on mute. And I will talk through a little bit of the introduction of Mobilize as we're in the introduction phase. So the 3 R's of volunteer management, recruitment, retain, and reward are achievable without Mobilize. However, through the Mobilize network of 1.7 million volunteers and counting, as well as our automated processes that save organizers hours every week and reduce the flake rate, these 3 R's are actually a lot more attainable and achievable with Mobilize. Each of our examples today will include tips and best practices specific to Mobilize. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the platform, this is going to be a high-level overview. So at Mobilize, we are super dedicated to providing you with a platform that allows you to recruit your volunteers more easily and increase their engagement. So folks are not just coming to take one action with you, but they're coming to take recurring actions and reaching out to new volunteers easily through our network and the social sharing built-ins that we'll talk about shortly. This is for both virtual and in-person events alike. So how to attract your events, how to get your events in front of new audience and better engage current audiences. Our partners feature Mobilize across all of their digital channels and build it right in and integrate it into their current digital stack of tools. We are also constantly optimizing the platform to make signing up to take actions a lot easier and encourage the volunteers to bring friends and come back for more events. And as you can see, it actually improves upon your conversion rate and just increases that volunteer engagement, making it a lot easier to achieve those 3 R's. And then leveraging the network. The Mobilize network provides benefits that include social sharing capabilities, the cross-promotion of other partner organizations, a central events feed for your organization. This is where your volunteers will come and take action with you over and over again. Additionally, your events will be promoted on the mobilize.us feed, opening you up to a whole bunch of new channels of volunteers. All right, kicking it over to you, Ruby.
Thank you. So this is our Action Finder tool where we recruit new users through low-lift asks of basically entering your zip code to see a suite of actions that are most relevant to you. We show a variety of straightforward asks, allowing the user to convert via the action that most resonates with them. And this is where we bring in Mobilize events and have an algorithm that ranks actions based on relevance to the user and impact of the ask. One action we've leaned into in the age of social distancing is letter writing. So you'll see that red card here, write letters to superstate voters. Vote Forward is an affiliate of Swing Left, and we're currently hosting national virtual letter writing parties across the country. And then another way we actively use Mobilize to recruit is their Bring a Friend feature. When you RSVP for an event, the prompt to bring someone with you, invite someone, has been leveraged really heavily by our field team.
Sorry, getting off mute takes a little bit of time. So offering engaging virtual events, retain. So during this time of social distancing, we have seen that volunteerism is not going down. We may not be organizing like we all used to, and it may be virtual all the time everywhere right now, but a lot of organizing is happening, and we can see this across the platform. All right, so there are 2 types of virtual events on Mobilize. The virtual volunteer actions are an Act Now type of action. Folks use these for everything from digital actions to open virtual phone banks. I've actually seen people use them to encourage folks to register to vote by mail. And we'll dig into a couple examples of both of these shortly. Shifted virtual events are the other type of virtual event that you can create on the platform. These are going to be really similar to an in-person action, really. The biggest difference is that instead of an address, you've got a virtual location, so you're holding it remotely. These are great for virtual meetings, trainings, phone bank shifts. I actually believe you all probably signed up for this on a shifted virtual event. So that is the 2 types that we offer here at Mobilize. And let's walk through a few examples. So this one is an example of a training. It's a shifted virtual event. The volunteer will sign up and receive all of the information around how to log in, any additional information you want to include here. So I've seen everything from toolkits to FAQs, instructions, or additional links to trainings could be great to include in there. The next example is a text bank. So this is a virtual volunteer action. This allows a volunteer to immediately click this and be directed to whatever URL you are directing them to. In this instance, it is directing the user to a Slack team that they're basically joining the team immediately. And then the next example is actually learning how to peer-to-peer text. So This may be part of all the same workflow. You may join the text team and then be prompted to view a recorded training. This allows you to, again, just redirect your volunteers automatically to whatever URL you are asking them to do. So our automated built-in tools enhance your organizing with things like the automated confirmation nudges. These reduce the flake rate and allow you to confirm folks that have not responded. So as you can see, almost 50% of folks will actually self-confirm whether or not they're coming, and 90% of those people actually come. So you can spend your time reaching out to the folks who have not responded and really reduce that flake rate. Post-event surveys as well. So we have a post-action email and SMS if folks opt in. This builds an immediate feedback loop with you so that as you are running all these virtual events, it's really easy for you to get basically an immediate feedback loop and see how the volunteers are receiving the tech that you're using, feedback on the events, and so forth. And not included here, but we also have Mobilize messaging, which basically allows you to email directly from the platform to the attendees for your event or action. And then finally, we have an ActBlue integration. So you can turn your volunteers into supporters. So not only getting them to engage and re-engage, but give you small dollar donations and become supporters. All right, I'm gonna kick it back to you, Ruby.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So for Retain on the Swing left side, I'll speak to a lot of the ways that we specifically use the Mobilize tools that Jocelyn was just speaking to. But first, just one thing I like to advocate for all of the groups here in the progressive space is listen to your users. You know, if you want to know how they're feeling, just ask. We survey our users monthly, asking them how likely they are to volunteer or donate in the next few months, what types of actions they are most likely to take. And in light of COVID, we've actually updated that to be weekly, given that things change on a daily or weekly basis. And our supporters have indicated that they're more interested in writing letters, and so we're actively investing more into the letter writing program. In terms of the way that we specifically use some of the Mobilize tools Jocelyn was just speaking of, the custom RSVP confirmation email, so we updated that to help transition people from in-person to virtual organizing, using the Mobilize email tools feature to include links to trainings to help them feel supported as they transition to learn how to use Zoom or phone bank for the first time. As well, our field team also uses the Mobilize America post-event survey to improve our programming. And a specific example of this is learning that people new to phone banking during our recent Wisconsin phone banking efforts complained in the survey that they weren't talking to enough people. So we adjusted our messaging to set better expectations for new volunteers on how important each call is, whether or not they actually talk to a human, and how likely that they are to talk, how many people they're going to talk to per phone banking shift. And I'll kick it back to Jocelyn.
All right, and finally, of the 3 R's, reward. Empowering volunteers to become hosts and capturing data that you use your full tool set to build community. So Mobilize allows you to empower your volunteers to become hosts using our distributed organizing tool. Volunteers can submit events that go through an approval process before going live. Volunteers can then manage their event directly from your Mobilize platform. All of this allows you to capture data and use your full tool set to build your community, as well as branching out into new volunteer bases that you maybe didn't have before. For distributed organizing, we have seen quite a powerhouse. Nearly 30% of events on Mobilize are volunteer hosted events, with nearly 15% of the total signups across Mobilize coming from those volunteer hosted events. So this is that untapped volunteer network that you get when you have the distributed organizing on. And 21.5 thousand volunteer hosted events to date is just extremely impressive. So those are all just volunteers creating events and hosting them. So talking about that full tool set to build your community, we integrate with many of your current tools and can be added right to your existing systems. And building Mobilize into your tool track allows you to accomplish the 3 R's and attract and keep the best volunteers during the time of social distancing and after. I will kick it to you, Ruby, to talk about reward.
Yeah, thanks. So one way that we at Swing Left recognize our super volunteers is through the tech tools that we built for them to make it easy for them to use the Mobilize distributed organizing events creation. So, and then our field team can also further promote volunteer created events in our Action Finder tool that I shared earlier. Another thing I want to mention is just overall recognizing your community, showing them the data. After each cycle, we provide an impact report showcasing all of the work that Swing Lefters have put in. Our creative team works on showing volunteer work through videos, social media takeovers. Our field team uses the Mobilize email tools to send thank you emails to volunteers. And this is especially helpful when we recruit a lot of volunteers through other partners like Daily Coast. So being able to aggregate all of those emails in one platform has been really helpful and also useful in terms of data privacy of people's emails. And regardless of the outcome, I recommend always having a plan to recognize the work put in by your community. We can go to the next slide to close this out. So just to recap, recruit, lower the barrier of entry, give people clear, tangible asks up front, offer trainings for people who have never done this before, and encourage people to bring their friends. For retain, listen to your users, integrate surveys, and integrate those results into your process. And then finally, reward, set time aside to recognize your users, show them the results of their work, and maintain momentum for next cycle. And then I think we are ready for Q&A.
Yeah,
we've got a bunch of good questions while you guys are speaking. Feel free to drop some more into the Q&A and I'll ask Jocelyn and Ruby. Starting from Ann Daly, besides using Mobilize and Swing Left tools, do you have other recommendations to recruit volunteers? I think either of you can jump in on that.
Yeah, so I can say what I've seen folks doing, and then if Ruby's got any examples, that would be great. Folks I've seen really successful using everything from Hustle and recruiting people with the, or peer-to-peer texting and recruiting people with the event link. I've seen a lot of success in social media, just sharing on Facebook. I like to think of Mobilize as something that you can really layer in with all of your existing systems. So however you're currently recruiting people to come to your events, you can easily weave Mobilize into that.
Yeah, I'll just do a big +1 to recruiting via text. We actually did a text campaign for Virginia in 2019 and had a very, very high success rate of recruiting new volunteers via text. And the other thing I would say is we're actually working on getting more testimonials at Swing Left to help showcase, the transition from someone who's never volunteered before to an active volunteer and what it's actually like to become a volunteer. I think that those stories can be helpful for people who may feel that they, don't have the skills or experience to start volunteering.
The one thing I will add is we also have a cross promotion feature in Mobilize where you can kind of promote the events of someone who is like-minded to you. And I think, like Jocelyn said, Mobilize makes it easy to do that, but you can do that without Mobilize too. If there are organizations that you are closely aligned with and you can kind of cross promote each other's events and leverage each other's lists, that's a great way to recruit new volunteers. All right, questions are flying in, guys, so give me a second. From Kathy, can we edit the feedback questions that come from Mobilize?
Yeah, great question. So this is actually, the question itself is just whether or not for that post-shift feedback survey, it's just whether or not folks have attended the event, how they received it, and then an open free form response. So there's not really survey questions or anything. It's just giving folks the opportunity to respond. But overall, the automation pieces are not editable at this time.
All right, from April, can you talk more about the virtual meeting? I'd like to understand how to promote a virtual meeting for our established membership versus a shifted virtual event like an action hour.
Yeah, I think, so if I'm reading this right, I think what you may want to be doing is having a virtual shifted event for both of these, but one may be private, so it's not out on your event feed and available to the public like an action hour. You can have a shifted virtual event that's marked as private, and then you can just recruit internally for that. I've seen a lot of success in various unions actually doing that for member-only events, or like a cohort of volunteers that have a special training. It's a link that maybe not be public facing, but you'll recruit internally.
Great. From Flow, when you promote volunteer created events, how much guidance or requirements do you give to volunteers? Ruby, maybe, is that something you want to tackle?
Yeah, sure. So on our website, we have a lot of different guides and resources created by our field team for our volunteers. And we actually recently just created a virtual organizing hub page on our site, which gives a lot of just how-tos, step-by-step instructions on what's required for each event campaign. And then we also have, for our super volunteers, a private Facebook group that they can use to support each other, as well as a volunteer Slack where volunteers can come and ask questions as well.
Great. From Erica, can we show the slide again with the way it links with our own tools? I think that's do we have an integration slide, Joss?
Yeah. Trying to make it go backwards.
Erica, ping me if this is not the slide you were looking for. Okay, we have a question. Do you have a texting tool?
That's a great question. If this is for Mobilize, we are not a texting tool. We people use us in tandem with texting tools, but we are not one. Ruby, if this is for Ruby, if you want to talk about your texting tool.
Yeah, so we're actively scoping texting programs right now. So we don't have one that's specific to Swing Left, but we also bring in coordinated campaign events, and if they're using a texting tool, then that's just promoted on the event page itself.
We have a great blog post that outlines the messaging tools that we see a lot of our partners use in tandem with Mobilize, and we can include that in the follow-up email so that you can kind of see the most common options. Okay, from Angela. I don't know if this is a question, but it's a really good point. What about tangible rewards, stickers, buttons, etc.? We use them in the Buttigieg campaign to acknowledge our supervols and those who stepped outside their comfort zone to do something harder, such as canvassing. Ruby, is that something you've seen success with?
Yeah, definitely. We have a Swing Left Shopify store, and we do send totes, Swing Left swag to volunteers across the country, and it's definitely a great way to give recognition to volunteers for sure.
Great. Just to be clear, point of clarification, to make a shifted virtual event, we only need to select remote when creating the event. Do you want to just clarify the two types of virtual events real quick, Jocelyn?
Yeah, so when you create a new event in Mobilize, there are 3 basic types of events you can create. There's an in-person event, and then there are 2 virtual event types. So I just reviewed the 2 virtual event types. There's a virtual volunteer action, which is sort of an act now type of action. It'll redirect the volunteer to whatever action it is, whether it's open virtual phone bank or a petition or something like that. And then the virtual shifted action is something more like a meeting where you're going to have people basically doing something at a time, at a place. It's just the place is going to be virtual. So those are the 2 types of virtual events you can have on Mobilize. And when you create a new event, you'll just select from one of those 3, being the 2 virtual and the in-person.
Great. This is a question we get all the time. Karen asked, can you guys speak to integration of Zoom with Mobilize?
Yeah, so I am not on the product team, so I can't speak for future plans or anything like that as far as integration goes. But what we've seen folks be really successful with is setting up their Zoom itself so that it doesn't require the registration. That way folks can sign up for the Mobilize event and then receive the link to the Zoom registration that way. I believe, Emily, that's probably how this event was set up.
Yeah, so I was going to say we included a password for the Zoom, but we did not require registration. So by signing up for Mobilize, you received the link and the private details, and you didn't have to register twice. We also have a really great blog post about one, how Mobilize can help prevent Zoom bombing, which, as you guys know, is a huge issue right now, and also how it adds all these additional features that Zoom just doesn't have. Zoom really is just the video conferencing capability, but Mobilize kind of enhances all of your recruitment and re-engagement strategies. So we'll send that around with the follow-up email as well.
And just to add to that as well, if you have any users that you found that you needed to block or something like that, you can block volunteers on your admin panel in the volunteer tab. So if you did run into worst case scenario, somebody being nefarious, you can always go in and block them, and then they won't be able to get any of those automated emails that would give them the information next time.
Great. We have a question from April. Can you speak to the integration of Mobilize with Action Network?
Action Network is on our product integration plan. I can't speak to any of the timelines on that, but I know that our product team is looking into doing integrations with Action Network. It is not currently something that is integrated though.
Barry asks, what is a CRM or an eCRM?
Oh, I don't know if I can answer that the best.
I didn't know either. Sorry to punt it to you.
Yeah, all I can really say is that they are going to be your database. So that, like, we do not function necessarily as a CRM, but a lot of people will integrate with their CRMs. I am not savvy enough to give you a deeper answer on
that. Let's see, digging through some of these. From Milo, any plan to allow admins or organizers to send group texts to sign up folks? Right now they're doing that manually as the event is starting for those who have not yet shown up. You want to talk about our automated reminders a little bit, Jess?
So sorry, I'm following along and I scrolled over to it.
Fine,
so
I'm jumping around a little bit.
You can use the emailing tool. Mobilize messaging within the platform, you can email your attendees. I can't speak to any plans around group text, though I will say that is not the first time I've heard of that request. It's definitely something folks ask for, and we love hearing feedback like that.
Great. From Sean, what ladder of engagement do you suggest for volunteers? Ruby, is this something maybe you can touch on, sort of how you move from a first-time volunteer to ultimately a volunteer host?
Yeah, so we actually recently just did some work, user journey work on the volunteer journey and the donor journey, specifically through Winglift. So, first awareness, how does somebody become aware of your organization, whether that's, by seeing swag, like we mentioned earlier, or, being at an event, or learning from a friend. So starting off with, just somebody who's kind of aware, a follower, maybe on social media, to someone who's actively, engaged, come to the site, or, found us through a direct Mobilize linked to one of the events that our volunteers are hosting. So really getting over that first barrier to actually attend an event and understand what it's like. One thing that we offer is just a very simple strategy that we hope everyone can be able to communicate effectively, whether or not they're experienced in political organizing or not. So we focus on 12 super states. We've identified those are the most strategic states in 2020 for these reasons, and so that they can become advocates for Winglift as well. And once they become regular volunteers, they've experienced what it's like to attend multiple events. then starting to introduce them to, more options for actually hosting events, having one-on-ones with people on our full-time field team, and just actively supporting their efforts to organize locally in their community.
Great. We have a couple of questions about hosts. One, do you receive a history of host emails through Mobilize?
So the emails aren't hosted in Mobilize. Once they're sent out, they will, all responses come into your inbox. So the host will have the same sort of workflow. That said, I do believe there's a BCC copy to whatever email you have associated with your, with the distributed organizing campaign.
And when we send out this survey for feedback, does the host get the feedback or the admin?
The host can receive the feedback. So the feedback, and I'm gonna actually jump ahead because I was scrolling around. There's a question around what reports can we get from the event. So tying that into this, the event itself, the host can export their attendees and they'll get all that information in it. So there's an export that they can email to themselves. It's a CSV. You guys will also be able to do the same, and you'll get all that qualitative feedback. So not only can you review it, but the host can review it too.
Great. Quick question from Erica. What type of end product report can we get from each event? Like an Excel spreadsheet of attendees and their contact information?
Yeah, so that's, yeah. So you'll get a whole bunch of information. I think there's a couple questions in here that I think actually I feel maybe best be redirected to the weekly virtual event training too, because I feel like some of these might be better adjusted for like screen sharing, but you get a CSV Excel, you'll get the volunteer contact information, the shift they're associated with, a whole bunch of extra information about the event, as well as their feedback.
Great. Just a couple more. From John, I am not clear how to put Mobilize events in front of my known contacts. Where are the links or controls for that purpose? Jocelyn, maybe worth talking about the slide you had with email, text, and kind of all the digital channels.
I will talk a little bit, but if Ruby has any best practices around it too, I'd love for her to share. Back. Here you go. So yeah, I think for Mobilize, you're going to want to put your events there, have them engaging, but that event feed and the event links themselves, those are where you're going to want to sort of integrate and big I or little I integrate into your existing platforms. So as you can see here, 20% of signups on the platform across the board come from web, social, and SMS. So that's 20, 20, 20. And then 40% come from email. So whatever emailing you're doing currently, you can add the Mobilize event feed or the Mobilize link. If you have a website, linking it to your website is a really great way. You can just put a redirect button with an event, like an event button on your main page, click it, and it'll redirect to your Mobilize event feed. I've seen a lot of organizations really successful with that. I don't know if Ruby, you have any best practices around getting them out in front.
Yeah, so we actually recently did a pretty major update to our group builder tool. Swing Left groups are groups across the country. Some of them are indivisible, some of them are affiliated with, specific progressive organization, and a lot of them are like specifically Swing Left. So it's, wherever you come from, if you align with our mission and goals, you can create a Swing Left group where any distributed organizing event that you host through your email, through Mobilize, will show up on that page. And we recently introduced a feature where you can upload a list of your contacts to invite them to that group. Once they confirm that, then they will be able to see all of the events that you've created through Mobilize on that group page.
That's really cool.
Great. We had one question from Flo, and Flo, I apologize if I'm not totally grasping it, but she was asking about creating a customized calendar of events, something like events in a certain zip code or date. Jocelyn, I have some thoughts, but did you want to answer that?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily like have a calendar sort of functionality. When volunteers sign up for the event, if they are using a Gmail account, that automatically gets added to their Google Calendar, which is really cool. I run a lot of trainings though, and I have lots Mobilize events all over my calendar. But so that's kind of like, that's as custom, I guess, for a volunteer as it gets. But you can use the event feed to filter. So you can filter by date range, you can filter by zip code, and then you can take that URL from the filtering and share that. So if you wanted to filter it down to a zip code area and share that with your volunteers in that zip code, it'll give them a like custom tailored location feed. But there are a lot of filterable fields on the event feed, including tags and ADA accessibility information. So there's a lot of filterability, and each filter you use, you can actually take the URL then and share it out.
The other thing to note is that any volunteers coming to one of your pages are geo-targeted, so they will see in priority the events closest to them based on zip code. So that's something we automate for you. You don't need to do an added filtering step for that. All right, last question, and lucky for you guys, I can answer it. Are these webinars available online at other times or via a shared recording? For the recording, absolutely. We will share this out tomorrow, and feel free to share it with any colleagues or friends that you think this would be helpful for. We are going to be doing webinars every Wednesday, and we will send around kind of the next couple ones coming up in our future emails, and we'll keep you posted on additional ones. As for Swing Left, Ruby, anything you want to tout that might be of interest to these attendees?
Yeah, so we also have virtual organizing training sessions happening. If you go to our website, and you'll see that there should be a link to our virtual organizing hub, which also links to additional trainings that we have as well.
The last thing I want to mention, we had a bunch of people message privately asking how they can get started with Mobilize. If you go to join.mobilize.us, there's a form you can submit, and our team will be in touch with you to schedule a demo, totally free. The other thing I wanted to mention was that if you are a nonprofit or a government entity doing COVID-19 specific work, we are actually giving you free access to Mobilize, to our core platform, through the end of next month. So definitely we will send around a form to submit your information for that too, but we want to support you in those efforts and want to make it easy for you to do so. With that, I think we're all set. We will send all this follow-up information and the recording by end of day tomorrow at the latest, and we hope to see you guys on future webinars. Thanks so much for joining us, and thank you to Ruby for being such an awesome partner for Mobilize.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.